dealing with real estate. I'd like to introduce Bonnie Kissel from the Victor Company. She has one child, 2 grandchildren, and is 23 years in the real estate business. She is on the Haverhill Board of Realty on the Board of Directors. Then we have Barbara Brown of the Gordon Brown Agency. She has no children but a chocolate lab named Gable. She has 15 years in the real estate business and was the '89 Realtor of the Year. Congratulations, Barbara. Joy Merrill of the ERA Joy Merrill Agency. She has 4 children. She's been in the business 5 years and has her own agency after 2 years. Joy, this sounds unbelievable. I take it that you're a product of the '80s boom. You've done very well.
Thank you. Thank you, Sandy.
What's going to happen in the '90s?
We're going to go bigger and better.
Do you ladies agree with that?
Yes, I think so, yes.
We're going to recover.
We're going to recover. And what do the times look like now, Barbara?
The market right now is, and during my board presidency last year, I felt it was in the process of normalizing, and I think that's still the case. I think people have to get a little realistic with their expectations of real estate and what it can do for them, and kind of wash from their minds the false equity that we experienced back in '87, '88. There were a couple of years that we got real inflated.
I've been reading stats, and they're saying that like in the '86, '87, the average home sold in 4 to 5 weeks. A person saw 3 to 4 homes, and you even hear tales of people overbidding for a price of a house. Today, they're telling you you have to wait, what, 3 months to sell a home? People are seeing an average of what? How many homes? Do they see more
You're
than
seeing
that?
a lot of homes. You can see anywhere, if you're really fortunate, you can see as low as 10 to 15 and up from there. Sometimes it's 30 or 40 houses before they find what they're looking for.
First-time buyers. Are they experienced? Do they know what they're doing? Are they better informed?
Yes.
Yeah, much more sophisticated. Of course, the media has a lot to do with that. They realize that there's a lot out there for them to, to experience, and there are a lot of professionals, and I think your upward mobile young people realize that they can go out and seek the professional help from not only realtors, but bankers, attorneys, inspectors, everyone, different areas.
Joy, do you agree with the home inspections? Is that something a person should do before they buy a home?
Definitely. Before we go on to that, though, I just wanted to point out on the first-time buyers, I think the buyers that we see that come through our doors are just a small percentage of the first-time buyers that are out there. Those particular ones that we see have probably already visited a mortgage company, or they've done quite a bit of reading. The media has given them so much to go on, but unfortunately it works against some of our sellers, because the printed word says look at as many homes as you can chalk into a week's period of time and then make an offer $20,000, $30,000 less.
Now, why do you go to a mortgage company first?
Actually, they go to be pre-qualified.
Right.
Most buyers today, because they are more sophisticated, want to know exactly what they can buy. People are very disillusioned if they look at a house that's priced above what they can afford, because nothing else ever compares. It just never looks as good as what they saw originally. But most of our buyers come pre-qualified.
And actually, that's good for the seller, because he knows when he is looking at an offer from that prospective purchaser that person has been to a lender and they have been pre-qualified, and so that buyer is really ready to perform. They're very serious.
And that must make your job easier.
Oh, definitely.
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 Yeah. Especially when, like Joy mentioned, they come in with these, I don't know, I get a lot of buyers that say, well, my dad told me, never offer list price. And again, I think the buyers, that's our job, is to educate the buyers. And just because your dad says, that may not be the right thing for you to do. You've got to stand on your own 2 feet and use your judgment with your experience in the marketplace.
Right. Okay. The other thing is that, most of the time people think, well, I'll eat peanut butter and jelly for the next 2 years and I'll be able to afford a house, but it really doesn't work that way. So for those buyers who aren't walking through our doors, I think, nobody's going to bite them. They should come in and really find out what they do have to do to qualify, because there probably are a lot more people out there that could buy a home.
And they could start planning now. In other words, if their goal is to buy in 2 years from now, they could start saving money. They could clear up any credit problems they might have, pay off that car that is a horrendous burden, and do a lot of things that could put them in an excellent position. And 2 years goes by very quickly.
And when do you know you're ready?
I've
Where
never
there's a
asked a
will,
buyer
there's a way.
that. When they arrive on our doorstep.
I think everybody wants to ultimately own a home of some sorts, you know, maybe a condo, maybe a home. But that's what they need to do, is get out there and ask some questions first and talk about their time framework. That's one of the first things I talk with people about. I say, okay, you know, yes, we know you're here and you want to buy a home, but are you looking to be in by Christmas time? Or what's your goal? You know, would you like to be in next spring? Would you like to be planting bulbs in the yard next year? They usually have a definite time framework in mind.
And how long should they keep a home?
As long as they like it.
Well, national averages is 3 to 5 years. It's historically been a 3 and 5 year turnover period. And I've experienced that several times.
Is that to go to bigger to better? Or is that just...
Not necessarily.
It used to be that the banks said, and again, I'm dealing with 5 years experience, that you'd have to keep a home from 3 to 5 years to experience any equity.
Okay.
Now it looks like, to me, it's more like 5 to 10 years before you'll build up any equity, especially depending on what price range you bought in 4 or 5 years ago.
It depends on what the buyer's goal is, too. Is this the last house? Is this the first house? Is this the house
Right.
that they're going to raise their children in? It depends on the position of the buyer.
So a home is still a good investment, in your
Oh,
opinion?
yes.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Definitely.
What else do you have for tax write-off when it comes that time, you know, rather than
Yeah.
the rent out the window?
Yeah, this is true. Getting back to the home inspections, how closely do you people work with the banks, the home inspections? Do you line all this up, or is that something that the customer comes in and has to do? Is that part of your
Do you
job
want it?
description? Sure,
Sure.
go ahead, handle that.
Basically, we cannot steer a customer to any one particular bank or home inspection company.
Okay.
We give them service, we give them 3 or 4 names to choose from. I have a type of a disclaimer that lists all the different inspectors that we've worked with and banks, and they can choose from that or use the yellow pages. So it's really up to them who they want to deal with, but yes, we follow it very closely. They have guidelines as far as dates they have to meet, and we help them as much as we can.
Is real estate business regulated? I know you have to have a license. Now, do the states reciprocate if you have a New Hampshire license? Does that automatically mean you can just go into Massachusetts? And
No.
Reciprocity? No.
No.
That was eliminated.
That's eliminated. So you have to take a test in both states?
Right. And pass it.
Now, you hold a license in both states,
Yes.
Bonnie. Do you sell in both states?
Yes. Yes.
And Barbara was pointing out that the influx seems to be people aren't moving to New Hampshire.
Barbara's right. Barbara's very right, because we're noticing a substantial number of people moving from New Hampshire back to Massachusetts.
And what do you credit that to?
I think basically it's the tax structure. The property,
property
the real
tax?
property taxes here in New Hampshire are such that it's just forcing people to go back over the border, and they're buying properties where the tax bill maybe is as much as half as much. And that's a very big plus. Also the services. They want water, they want sewerage, they want things that some of the communities here cannot provide. Special needs in your school systems.
Right.
Those things are met in Massachusetts, they're not in New Hampshire.
When they come to New Hampshire, we're still selling a lifestyle. You know, New Hampshire is rural. That's what we're about. And it's really a shame when people from Mass do come up and expect, and they say, you know, what am I getting for my tax dollar? Well, you're not going to get city services. You know, that's not the type of environment that you're bringing your family to. And it depends. Is that what you want for your family? They've got to define that, their own needs.
And again, the media. The media uses, you know, it's almost a play against the two
Right.
states.
Yeah.
And it's a matter of choice. It really is a matter of what you want
I think
your
in new
community.
construction, though, you can get a lot more house in New Hampshire for
Absolutely.
less price with a nice piece of land. And if that's what interests you, you know, that's still a reason for coming over the border.
Yeah, our acreage and our zonings
Right.
are much different than those in Mass.
Now, according to the McGraw-Hill Dodge report, they stated that the cost of housing is increasing, but yet the cost of a home, size-wise, is decreasing. Are you finding that to be true? Are people still building the big 4- and 5-bedroom homes, or are we going back to the 3-bedroom home?
building both.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
they're
it's
building
broad
small
spectrum.
homes, and one thing that they've been building more of is the unfinished second floor, which I find interesting because they did
Right.
it back in the
Expandables.
70s. Yeah.
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 These are the capes.
The capes,
Right.
gambrels, splits.
Yeah. I'd say there's more affordable, smaller housing up in our market area right now than there
Right.
has been in probably 5 years. The builders have realized that everyone can't afford the $200,000 house. And 5 years ago, that's what they were cranking them off, and selling them like hotcakes. And the average buyer can't get into that caliber of a house because of the pricing. So
Okay.
they've sized them down.
Now, what does the buyer that bought his home for $200,000 do when he now has it appraised and it's only worth $150,000? If that sounds reasonable.
It is very realistic.
He calls all three of us.
He tries to
he's-
stay there, I would suggest, unless he has to sell.
And some people do have to sell because of job transfer or a change in circumstance, divorce, whatever it is. Some people do have to sell that house, and some of the sellers just can't believe that this has happened to them.
The condo market, have we seen that bottom right out?
I think our area overbuilt for about a 2-year period, and I think a lot of that supply is getting used up now. If someone is building a good new, new condo product, the market's receptive. I just put a condo under contract the other day, and it's 1,600 square feet. It's a very nice unit. That's equivalent, close in size to my home, and about $80,000 difference. So I think there's still a need for the condos. I hope that our area doesn't start allowing more condo projects right now, because we do need to eat up the supply that we have.
Okay.
Most of the condos are concentrated in the Plaistow area, I would say.
Right.
And for the most part, this past year, the only condos that have sold in Plaistow have been those that are selling probably $15,000 to $20,000 less than they sold a year ago. And there's been a healthy market for those particular condos. And the other thing I think is even more important to point out is that the developed condos that have been developed, lived in for the past 2 or 3 years, they have a well-run association, and I think that's important to think about when you're buying the condo.
Yeah, the association is, the stability
Very
of the
important.
association is
Right.
very important because they control the whole project.
And what do you look for in an association?
A
As a
good
new
capital
template.
reserve fund, a good operating budget, well-maintained exteriors, units in good condition, and overall pleasing appearance, as well as the good financial stability, and happy owners. You know, if you go through a project and the people are out puttering around or they're walking their dogs and seem to be relatively happy, you know, it gives a good perception. If you go into a project where the grass is untidy, the trash isn't picked up, it's a very negative feel. But the capital reserve fund and the budget are extremely important because those cover really replacement costs.
I think you want to look at the historical condo increases too. If the fees have gone up rapidly and quickly once it was turned over to the Homeowners Association. I was involved in a condo project and as president. So, and when it did get turned over to the Owners Association, there were real reserve problems. So the question was, do you go special assessment? Do you raise the condo fee? And again, that's an association decision. I think if people are really curious about how the condo is run, they should talk to the association directors and officers, and they're going to give them straight answers.
How involved is the state in regulating your business? Or is it subject to like town ordinances as to what real estate can do and what they can't do?
Well, first of all, you have to realize that, number one, to be in the industry, you can have either a broker's license or a salesman's license. And salespeople generally work under someone licensed as a broker for either 2,000 hours or a year full-time before they're qualified to take the broker's exam. Brokers, per se, can go out and open their own business, okay? And Joy has many associates, as do I, and I'm sure you have many. And they work under our broker's license. We are responsible for their actions, okay? And we have in the state the Real Estate Commission, and we have a license law and rules and regulations which we have to adhere to and comply to. And the public has the opportunity to, if they have a problem with a realtor, to call the Real Estate Commission. The public also has the opportunity to call the Board of Realtors. And we have our own grievance and professional standards and mediation procedures available to people to help them out. So hopefully things we keep that type of stuff out of the courts. The court system doesn't need to get any more boggled down.
Now, how are you people updated on new regulations, et cetera? Is it like a teacher who has to go to a...
Bring it out, Bob.
Bring it up, my stuff. Well, I'm a paperaholic here, I guess. Fortunately, the National Association sends us a bi-weekly newspaper, okay, which is talking about federal regulations, things that are going on nationally in the industry, okay? We get a state newspaper, which is put out by our state association, and that's more highlighting things within the state. Registry review, I think all brokers' office have it. I just happen to bring it with me. There are no secrets. We all know whose properties have sold, to whom, for how much, and when. Liens that have been filed on properties, bankruptcies.
Now, is all this information, the info that you'd get in the, when you file for your deed, et cetera?
When you file for your deed.
When your deed is filed, like at the court?
Oh, yes. As soon as your deed goes on record, as we call it, it's compiled and mailed out. And you can. This is a subscription service that you can subscribe to. But you can also go up to the Registry of Deeds and just very easily look it out.
So that's where that information would come from, is what I'm asking.
Yes, the Registry of Deeds. And then the National Association puts out a tremendous publication called Real Estate Today. And I think every broker would probably read this month, cover to cover. Okay, just about every month. It has great tips and highlights and things about that are going on. The State Association will send us quarterly and semi-annually summaries of MLS data. And these come down to us from the State Association, which really, it talks about the pricing index, the median sale prices, days on market, and it breaks it down by Board of Realtors all across the state. There are 16 boards within the state of New Hampshire, one of which is called the Rockingham Board, which does not reference Rockingham County per se. It's a jurisdictional area. I think a lot of people think that when they hear the Rockingham Board that it's all the county, and it's really not. There are, through our association, tremendous numbers of educational pieces. This is particularly helpful if you're in the business, real estate brokerage. You can look it up, and it will tell you how much your expenses should be if you're a small firm, a medium firm, a large firm. All different types of things.
Okay, expenses, good word. Are these all freebies?
Oh, no. What is free these days? No, it costs, to join our local Board of Realtors, when you join the association, you're joining an umbrella organization of the National Association of Realtors, the New Hampshire State Association, in your case Bonnie's in Mass, and your local board, okay? And the dues are broken down. For instance, I'll just give you, there's no secret about it, the Rockingham Board, $73 of our dues per year go to the local board, $49 go to the National Association, and $98 goes to the state. So in other words, the funds are all allocated and budgeted, for the membership.
Now, is this mandatory? Does every realty have to belong to these?
If you're a realtor.
If you're a realtor, yeah, there's a difference.
There is a difference between just plain real estate. You can be a real estate broker or salesperson without being a realtor.
Right.
But being a realtor, you come under that umbrella of the National Association.
Okay.
We are the largest trade organization in the country. We're about 800,000 members nationally. So, and we have, I think, a lot of clout in Washington. We have a great lobbyist network, political action committee. It's a very, very strong organization.
Well, that's a lot of people.
It is.
We contribute also to our political action committee in the form of an RPAC contribution on a yearly basis, which helps.
Now, is that done statewide? At a statewide level?
It's done, in our case, it's done board-wide, and I'm sure your board...
Yeah, I'm the RPAC chairman for Rockingham.
Good for you, Barbara.
Oh, boy. It's tough, because it's a tough year to get people to want to donate funds for political causes. It's been a difficult year for that fundraiser. Other fees that we are subjected to, well, your license isn't free, $75 every 2 years for your broker's license.
And 90 in Massachusetts.
90 in Massachusetts.
Wait till you get yours.
Okay. And the salespeople pay, what is it, 55, I think? Yeah, 55.
So there are expenses to...
Right.
You
Absolutely.
have to carry extra insurance on your car because you're taking people, around in your car.
The public.
Now, do you have to carry a liability insurance?
Yes.
Yes.
Now, that in itself is very expensive.
Yes.
Right.
Are you talking about individually or the brokerage agency?
You tell me. There's both.
We're bonded. We all pay a real estate bond.
Okay.
At least.
Brokers are bonded, in the state of New
brokers are
Hampshire.
bonded. And they're
We
also
have
in the state of
Yes,
Massachusetts.
yeah.
And you also pay, for your office, you have an extra liability fee. You have for your car insurance.
Some companies carry what they call an errors and omissions policy. I know some companies do it per transaction, and some people have it, per sales volume of the company. And fortunately,
In our case, it's $12.50 per transaction.
Is it?
So every time you do a deal, that $12.50 is due. And that pays your errors and omissions. That covers everything except deliberate fraud. Deliberate fraud, you're on your own, definitely.
And unlike an independent company, if you do have a franchise, there are franchise fees, which probably amount to about another $2,000 a month for the franchise. So that, between that and the MLS fees, just the dues alone are pretty costly.
yeah, I think the public needs to be aware that, they all know about MLS, and MLS is actually a subcommittee of a board of realtors. And their house doesn't get in this little book for nothing, okay? For instance, right now, it's $30 fee to submit a listing.
And how often does that book come out?
Oh boy, what are we up to now? Again, we're trying
Every
to cut
other, for the
cost
large
every
one.
other, every other week for
Right.
the large book. And then
So
we get a
that's 5
supplemental.
monthly?
Supplement,
And
Yeah.
supplemental.
And there's
Yeah.
a charge for the books.
Oh, yeah.
There's a charge for the books.
$90 a
And on
quarter.
top
That's
of
for
that,
salespeople.
every week we get what's called a hot sheet in our area. And those listings that came out during the week that did not get into the book
Yeah.
go to each office so that we're aware of the
new
up-to-the-minute
listings,
new
yeah.
listings.
In
under
today's
agreement.
market, I'm
Yeah.
sure you need to know immediately what's available and what isn't.
Right.
It's nice
Where-
with our MLS system now because it is computerized. And you
Computerized,
can jump
it's
on the
made a big
computer
difference.
and you can say, okay, I want to know every house on the market in the town of Plaistow in the price
Right.
range of 100 to 150. Pop, you have it. It's great.
And I think what's interesting to note with that hot sheet that comes out every week is not so much the number of listings that come out, but the extensive list of price changes, the reduced
The
prices,
reductions.
The reduced
just to be
prices.
competitive.
It's scary, the reduced prices.
Yeah.
It's weekly.
Yeah.
It's weekly.
It's weekly.
I'm assuming advertising must be a heavy hit.
Right.
Oh, yeah, it is.
You advertise just local papers?
Again, it's going to primarily depend on the type of property. You have to sort of anticipate your market for any specific property. If it's something unusual, I'm sure the girls would agree with me that it merits being put into the Boston Globe. If it's, your average home that probably an upgrader is apt to be interested in, your local papers and coverage will probably work for you.
I'm just going to, say something on the advertising end of it. For the 2 years that I have owned the company, we have tracked our advertising. And we have found that at the time we started, we had published, we used 5 publications. And the local publications are great for the seller to see his house, but they do not generate the calls. And so what I've done now is concentrate the same amount of money, but into 2 publications that generate calls mostly from the Massachusetts, Southern Mass areas.
Yeah.
See, the purpose of advertising is to make the telephone ring. And sometimes the sellers really don't understand, they expect to see their house in the newspaper every week. Well, it doesn't work that way. We do our advertising to make the telephone ring. And we use a number of different types of publications. We found one, it's called the Real Estate Book. And we see
Yeah.
people dragging them around. They're
Right.
free throughout the valley.
Oh, yes.
And they'll call you and say, on page 19, and then they'll explain the house. But you know what they're talking about. But we found that to be one of the greatest tools as
that's
far
a
as
good tool.
advertising.
Who do you represent? Do you represent the person that walks into your office or the person whose listing you have? Or is that a touchy?
Person whose listing you have solely, exclusively, and forever.
You have what's called a fiduciary obligation to your seller if you enter into an exclusive contract to be their marketing agent. Okay.
Okay, why don't you explain an exclusive?
Okay,
before we
yeah. There are
progress?
several types of listings, and when you asked about regulation, we are regulated by the FTC to some degree. The FTC also, about a year or so ago, said, you brokers shall also allow people that want to have an exclusive agency type of listing to submit the listing into the book. An exclusive agency means that you, Sandy, can also sell your house, but you've hired me as your exclusive broker.
All right.
Okay? Some agencies will accept that type of listing, some won't. That's office policy. Okay? The exclusive right to sell is you are hiring me 100% to do the job. I'm responsible to you, Sandy, to get your house sold. okay? That's my primary job. I owe you my utmost faith, loyalty, and confidentiality with everything I say and do for you. You are my client as the seller. Out in the West and Midwest, apparently buyer brokerage is becoming more popular, where buyers can go and contract with a broker to represent their interest, okay? It's a new field. I think you'll be seeing it coming into New England. It does create some conflicts because how can I, if my utmost loyalty is to you, Sandy as my seller, how can I say, sure, Joy, I'll represent you as a buyer? I can't. I can't wear two hats, okay? So I've got to decide who am I going to represent. Basically, I think your brokers and sales associates know to tell buyers when they come in, please understand that I do represent the seller, but I'm obligated ethically to treat you fair and equally.
So who does represent the buyer?
The buyer.
The buyer.
The buyer.
And that's why the home inspections and everything become so important.
Right.
And that's
To
why you have
protect
to be
their
very, very
interest.
careful that you don't, in any way influence any of their decisions. We use, in our office, we use, and I'm sure you're using, the disclosure statement, which we have a buyer sign, that we have disclosed, and it's typed right on the sheet. We have disclosed that we work for the seller, but we will treat the buyer fairly and equitably. But it is right there. They can choose not to sign it, but it is offered to every single potential buyer on a property, so that there's no misunderstanding who we work for.
And that's difficult for a buyer because the buyer works hand in hand with the broker looking at the 15 or 20 houses that they're looking at, and they feel like, gee, she's my buddy. She's really looking out for me, and she wants to get me the best value. Yes, she does, and yes, she is looking out for you, but she does not represent you, or he.
And I'm sure it is tough because as being a consumer, you're saying you're spending your money so that you would naturally just assume that the realtor is the person that's going to be, like you say, your buddy.
But it's kind of like going into Jordan Marsh. The salesperson works for Jordan Marsh.
Right.
But, she's going to help you find the right dress or the right
Right.
whatever, and she's going to be your friend, but she works for Jordan
But her
Marsh.
ultimate loyalty
That's right.
is to Jordan Marsh.
That's right.
Joy, do you find an advantage to multiple listings or exclusives?
Well,
It's one and the
okay,
same.
it's one and the same. Right, when you take an exclusive listing,
Okay.
you have 72 hours to also put the house into multiple listing, so that not only is the person represented by one office, but all the other offices as well can sell the house.
As sub-agents to
Right.
the original agent.
Okay, so
Right.
multiple listing means it goes to, like you would say, sub-agents, but an exclusive just goes to you,
Right.
correct?
Right.
So
Just
what do you
it's a
recommend to
dissemination.
someone?
Well, the process normally is when you list someone's house, you take down all the information. They are listed exclusively with your office in that once it goes to multiple listing, it's open to everybody. So if Barbara were to see the listing and feel she had a buyer for that particular property, she'd call our office, make the appointment with one of the agents. They would show her and her customers the house.
Oh,
And
okay.
You
that's
work
how we
through the
use
original
multiple
agent,
listing.
yeah.
That's the co-brokerage
Right.
networking. That's the advantage of multiple listing. It's a tool by which you can disseminate listings to a much broader range of people and brokers, actually statewide.
So there's no advantage to having an exclusive?
Not really.
An
I don't
exclusive
think so.
agency?
No,
or
an exclusive, like an office exclusive.
Oh, an
where
Oh,
it's-
okay.
Yes.
Yeah. That's how I interpret
Oh, okay.
an office exclusive.
Right. My
We-
terminology is not
tough.
real estate.
It's
That's how we sell real estate.
That's another thing, Sandy, that we do have our own jargon, okay, as
I'm
we
finding
do
out.
in any trade. And I think that's very important for buyers, never to be afraid to say, what do you mean when you say ARM? We talk about ARMs and PMIs and all kinds of crazy things like that.
NGIC, yeah.
They should never hesitate to ask, because we, being involved in the trade day to day, we are subjected to using that terminology, and we forget that the public doesn't understand what PMI is.
Go ahead, explain. PMI.
PMI, private mortgage insurance, okay? And many of your loans are insured, and that's something that many of the lenders do require. So that's what PMI is all about.
I'd like to just make one point, if we don't say anything else tonight. One thing I would like to bring up is that the other thing that the average person doesn't realize is when they walk into an office and they ask an agent to find them a home, the agent that's doing her job is then going to do quite a bit of homework for that buyer. if she knows the properties on the market, she's going to try to find every single house that will interest them. And she's going to probably give up times with her family. She's going to give up office meetings, which in some cases are mandatory. And she's going to take those people around to find a house. Now, if on a whim, those people are not loyal and they go out and look at an open house on a Sunday, then if they find that open house on their own, they are then working with a different agent and could possibly end up buying through a different agent. And the poor girl that has done all the work doesn't get anything for her time. You have to realize that at the end of a week, most people come home with a paycheck. A real estate agent may wait 6 and 7 months before they make a paycheck. And putting the house under agreement is just the easy part. The hard part is when you have to struggle to get them financing, to get them through the financing. And what seems to be so easy to most people is really difficult. And I watch the agents day after day working so hard. And when the buyer just arbitrarily skips out on them, I mean, it's really depressing.
It can be very frustrating when simultaneously I say I'm the listing broker on a home, and I get a call from Joy, and she says, gee, Barbara, I'd like to show that house at 4 o'clock. And I may be in a hurry, and I don't think to say, gee, Joy, you know, do your people have something to sell, or may I ask their name? I generally would not ask her that. She'll tell me that when I meet them. And then Bonnie calls me an hour later and says, gee, Barbara, I'd like to show that house at 5 o'clock. And it's the same customer.
And that happens.
And that happens, and it's very difficult. So the public really needs to be aware that when you find a broker, that, an associate, realtor, or whatever, that you're comfortable working with, work with them. In other words, you know, don't make them feel like they're spinning their tires and that you're going to go down the street and, and like Joy said, on a whim, pop in at another office just to see if they have something else. Basically, we all have access to the same network of properties.
And the other thing is it's embarrassing for the customer because we work so closely with each other, the offices, that it could very well be that they have already seen that house with Barbara, and then here they come along with me, and they can be very, very embarrassed by the situation. So they really should realize that if they're working with a realtor that is working for them, stick with them, because they've given up their time and they deserve to make the money.
You mentioned hours. How many hours do you work in the average week?
Let's see.
Is there such a thing as an average week?
No such thing as an average week. No.
Joy?
Well, I'm usually there about 7:30 in the morning, and I'm usually there at 6:30 at night, and then come back down. I mean, I only live a couple of minutes from the office, so it's easy for me just to come right back. And when you have new sales agents, I mean, they're calling you every minute, and you want to be there for them. And I have always been a working broker. I work right with my people. I enjoy selling, I enjoy listing, and the people that work with me don't seem to mind any of that, and there's plenty to go around in the office, so it just works well for us.
Is it mostly a nights and weekend job?
Not anymore. Not for us
Yeah,
anymore.
I think it's changed also.
It's changed a tremendous amount.
Yeah, I think
you're finding more people that are available during the day to look at property than you used to. It used to be nights and weekends, but it's changed a lot. It's changed an awful lot.
Why?
I think because more people have more flexible time. And we do a lot of relocation business, and those people are available for like 2 or 3 days at a clip. They might be coming from Illinois or from Minnesota, and they'll be available Monday through Wednesday, all day, every day, because they're going to take this opportunity to find a house. And then 2 weeks later or a week later, the wife is going to come out and stamp it with her seal of approval. So you might be blocked in for 3 days or 2 days with one person, and they might have days available.
And they're your best buddy by the end of those 3 days.
You know them very well. You know them very well.
They say a pool is probably one of the worst home improvements you can do to your home. What do you think is one of the best home improvements?
kitchens and bathrooms.
That
was easy, right? We agreed
that
very
was real
quickly.
easy.
Yeah.
The two hardest rooms to
return.
clean are definitely the two best selling points: a sparkly, updated kitchen, and the same thing for a bathroom.
Our bathroom's growing larger. You look at the whirlpool centers, the jacuzzis.
I call them special interest bathrooms. We see quite a few now. I wouldn't say size has been such a determining factor as to the number of bathrooms. A lot more people are looking for a master bedroom with a bathroom connecting. They've gotten away from the old, say it's 3 bedrooms up with a 1-family bath. They found that lifestyle-wise it doesn't work anymore. They need the extra bathrooms. So it's very common for us to see in a home a full bath, which includes the tub, 3/4 bath, including a shower, and then of course a half bath or powder room. So you very typically will see those 3 units as bathrooms.
Okay, and a kitchen. What are they looking for in a kitchen?
A good working triangle. Having an interior design background, a well-designed kitchen for the woman does have what's called a working triangle between the refrigerator, the stove, and the sink. Okay? And I don't know too many women that enjoy a sink that's in a corner with 2 walls. There's nothing for them to look at. So again, it's workability, it's space planning, and there are a lot of good professionals out there that will help people design kitchens if they're thinking about remodeling.
I think, too, that there hasn't been as much building going on. So I know the magazines had said the trend was getting back to the big old bathrooms the way they used to be, but we're mostly dealing with resale houses, and you really have to deal with what you have. So
what
if
do
you're
you do?
refinishing, probably lighten things up and neutralize.
Right.
Get away from the
Right.
strong colors
Right.
of 14 years ago with the oranges and greens, and kind of go to the beiges and things that you could add your color with curtains and towels. Light oak cabinets, I find, spaciousness in a kitchen.
The open concept, a lot of light. People want a lot of light. The dark pine is gone. It's many of them are the Euro style kitchens with the vinyl. The same thing with bathrooms. They want light. We see a lot of skylights, atrium windows, anything that brings the outdoors in.
I think something else that people should realize, too, is that when you do put an addition on your house, it's very costly. And chances are, if it costs you $20,000 to put a small room on your house, you're not going to realize a $20,000 gain when selling it. But I think if you took your own house and you lined it up with others in the same price range, that would give you a leading edge because of the attractiveness of the larger and new room. But it does not necessarily add the value.
It's very hard for people to understand that sometimes you put things, or they'll put things in their houses or in their landscaping, such as a pool, that really is done just for them. The next buyer may have absolutely no interest in a jacuzzi or a swimming pool or whatever it is that they've done that they think is wonderful, and many times they're highlighting something that you just want to say to them, that's
Right.
not the best selling point of this house. Because I've seen pools bulldozed in. They just did not
Right.
want a pool. They wanted a
Right.
backyard that was suitable for children.
Well, classic story, my dad, and again, I'm 3rd-generation real estate here. My dad showed a house one time, and the customer said, God, I love the house, but I'd be terrified my child would fall in the pool. And he said, would you buy the home if it didn't have a pool? He said, of course we would, Mr. Brown. Fine, next week the pool will be gone. Just that simple.
Sign here.
Just that simple, and of course the present owner is like, aghast, they want my house, but they don't want my pool. And they can't take it personally. Again, everybody's needs are different.
Is it awkward to have the seller of the home there when you're showing it to the buyer?
Yes.
You prefer to
I
have them...
always advise my
Right.
sellers, please, even if it's horrendous weather, try and take a walk outside. The reason for that is that buyers, when they're looking really carefully at a home, they're going to zero in on what their particular hot points or interests are. They're going to want to spend more time there. And if they do have a problem, it may be ever so slight with something, and if they know that the owner is within earshot, they're not going to say
a word.
it. They're not going to verbalize to us because they don't want to offend that owner.
And as a
Okay.
salesperson, it's our job to overcome the negatives. They may be very minor, but they would hesitate to even mention them with the owner at home.
And sometimes the owners tend to be overly helpful, and they try to explain to the buyer exactly why they did a certain thing or how something works, and quite frankly, they become very much underfoot, and it's better if they're just not around.
And for instance, that transferee that Bonnie's got, she's got him for 12 hours on Tuesday and 8 on Wednesday. That seller has no concept that she has a time schedule that she has to
Right.
adhere to because she has property viewings arranged and scheduled, and it can complicate her life tremendously to be off by half an hour.
I'm sure.
And speaking of complications, the buyers who bring their children with them, That's a big complication. If you're going to go and look at a property seriously, don't bring your children, because they spend all of their time watching their children, and they're not seeing the house.
Appreciating the property.
Now, as a buyer, do I have the right to open closets, open cabinets?
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Sure.
Absolutely.
But we're not responsible for what falls out. Like the ironing board, the old-fashioned ironing board.
Another point too, you know, you mentioned about the children, but if there's anybody else that's going to be involved in making the decision, for instance, if a young couple wants their parents to see it, they may be contributing to the sale, or it just may be that whatever the parents like, that's what the kids will like. They should bring them along so that you're not making
shouldn't-
2 and 3 showings.
Oh, you shouldn't have one scout
No.
that just
Oh,
goes
no,
around.
not in our
No.
opinion.
Not in your
No.
No.
Bring the whole family. If you're going
Right.
to have 9 people look, bring them all.
9
Yeah.
people are going to make the decision?
Preferably the first time.
Joy, you had mentioned trailers, that
Yes.
they're real tough to sell.
Yeah. They call them mobile homes now, which is
I'm sorry,
You know,
okay.
but that's fine, that's fine. We've found that that's been quite a problem, and I did mention to Sandy that it would be a good topic to zero in on a little bit, because mobile homes were very attractive 3 and 4 years ago when the prices were out of sight for young people, older people starting out, because the prices were realistic. They were in the 70s and 80s and maybe even 90s, and people were buying them. Now those same people want to move on just like the rest of us, and because of the financing limitations, you can't finance for as many years as you could a home. Your percentages are higher. The guidelines for the banks that will take the mobile homes are so strict that these people cannot sell their mobile homes. And I really think there needs to be some kind of help from some of the banking industry so that we can get financing for the mobile homes.
In the past, the mobile homes are financed more or less like personal property, like a chattel mortgage. And that's where the high risk to the lender is that now you see it, now you don't. I mean, it is a mobile home. And per se,
It
in the
depreciates.
past, they were moved and they depreciate very rapidly, that type of thing. So yeah, that is an area that...
And if
Could
the
use
mobile
that.
home is on its own land, you know, that is a plus. However, the price of land has come down so that, you know, you're dealing with, say, a mobile home that's selling now for $89,000, and say it's 18 years old. Well, it has really seen its value. So for someone to just buy it and put a new mobile on it, they're paying $89,000 for the lot, a well, and a septic, which, if you were to add up by today's prices, probably would add up to about $50,000 rather than 89. So I mean, it's really tough.
That just triggered another thought that I had. Appraisers are becoming much more regulated, and they will have to be certified eventually. I think it's July of '91. They'll
Right.
have to be certified and licensed. New Hampshire's in the process of developing what will happen. Sellers need to realize that when we do our market analysis on a piece of property, we may not be able to tell them what they want to hear, okay? We know that we have to go from start to finish with those people. In other words, get them the best possible price in the least amount of time. We also know that we've got to get an appraisal on that property. And the appraisers are being watched very closely because of the market period when, you know, the banks weren't all that concerned. People had good down payments, they were paying hefty prices on properties, and now that equity is gone and the banks are getting burned on some of the properties. So they have to realize that it's not just the brokers per se that are making your house less valuable, okay?
Right.
It's our whole system, and we have to work within it, and we have to work for the sellers to the best way, in the best way we can. But then we also know that, you know, a seller could say, you're telling me my house is not worth more than 180, but I want to price it at 200. Well, you might, by some lucky fluke, come across a buyer that's willing to pay that. But if the lender is not willing to loan that amount of money, it's been an exercise in futility for everyone, and it causes nothing but heartache and bad feelings.
Right.
So sellers, I think, need to realize what we're up against when we do go with them, to them with our market analysis. In other words, we can't just pick a number out of the sky, okay? We have to really be able to justify it and know that we can follow it from listing period right through sale.
And that's your trigger assessments. The assessed value on a property. Many of the owners firmly believe that the assessed value has to be somewhere close to what their property is worth. And unfortunately, in this area, that is not the case.
Which is higher?
The assessed value, definitely the assessed value, because we have a property that's assessed at $184,000 here in town. The asking price is $124,500, and it's not sold, not even
Right.
close.
People need to realize that the assessments are a basis for taxation, okay? And every town can't afford to reassess
Right.
their whole town every time there's a big market turn, okay? So the assessment has to be an equalized assessment, and it has to last for a number of years, and then the rate's adjusted accordingly, the tax per thousand. So I think that's a real misconception that the public does have about assessed value. They think that it's market value. They think it's appraised value, and it's not.
And if the assessed value was brought down to the market value of the taxes, I would
Would be-
assume would be the
they
same
would
because
drop.
everybody
Probably
else's
they would drop.
Yeah,
They
Right.
would drop.
Right.
Comment on foreclosures. Are we seeing a lot of those, Bonnie?
We're seeing a lot of foreclosures of all types, single families, multifamilies, commercial properties, etc. The interesting thing is that the foreclosures are not being snapped up by the buyers. You know, everybody thinks that the buyers are going to go out there and snap up all these foreclosures. Many of the auctions I've attended, other than the bank and the attorney for the bank and the attorney for somebody else and a couple of brokers, there's nobody else there.
Okay. Anyone have a closing statement? One comment you want to give to the public? Words of wisdom?
Sure, I will.
Go ahead, Sharon.
Speaking to the sellers, if I would say right now, if you don't have to sell your home, don't do it, hold on to it. If you have to move from the area, rent it, if you don't mind dealing with tenants, and hold on to it until the market starts to be on the up incline, I guess how you'd say it. However, if you do want to sell, I think you should go by the market analysis that your realtor gives you, price it right at the beginning. Right now we're in the fall market. There's about a month and a half left to that market. And then we're dealing with Christmas, taxes, and it's going to be spring before we get quite a few buyers out there again. So, and also when you get the property ready for sale, make it look as good as you can, because when your buyer comes in, what might be a minor adjustment to the property out of your pocketbook now becomes $1,000 off the asking price. So that would be my word of wisdom.
I'd say it's always a good time to buy a home. Again, 15 years, I've watched the cycle in the trends. It's about a 4-year cycle historically. And, you know, there are pros and cons to every type of part of the cycle. Right now, we're in a tough time with pricing, okay? But say the seller has to sell for a little less. He's also going to go elsewhere, probably, and buy for less. So it equalizes out. There are tremendous mortgage programs out there. Shopping for a mortgage can be as exciting as shopping for a house. Okay, there are about that many options out there. So historically, I think that real estate has been a tremendous commodity for our country, and home ownership is one of the best things we can do for ourselves. I'd say never be afraid, and don't always assume that you're always going to make a quote-unquote killing on a home. Remember ultimately why you're buying a home. You're buying it for shelter, you're buying it for an environment, you're buying it to raise your family and your kids or animals, whatever. You know, don't think of it just solely in terms of economics. It's a lifestyle, and it's a major decision. You need to give it a lot of thought and explore it and work with professionals.
Great.
And I would say, don't listen to all of your friends and your neighbors and your relatives and your coworkers. If you feel that it's time to buy a house, it's time to buy a house. There are plenty of very good professional real estate people available that are willing to work very closely with you to find the right property. And there are some very good buys out there. And many times people will pass up a very good buy thinking that it's a down market, it's going to be there when I come back, and it's not going to be there when you come back. Because properties that are priced to sell do sell. So if you are serious about a property and you can afford it, take the 9 people with you for the real estate tour, but buy that house if that's really what you want.
And just one quick point about foreclosures. As brokers and salespeople, we can help buyers explore foreclosures. I've had many, many young couples come to me and say, gee, Barb, what's involved in buying at foreclosure? Well, there's a tremendous amount involved, and we as brokers can help. We can get the bidder's package, we can try and get them into the property ahead of time, we can do a lot of the research. I tell young people, I wouldn't even imagine going to a foreclosure auction and blindly bidding on a property. In other words, play to win. And the brokers will be happy to help you work on foreclosures too, and I think you're going to see more of that.
Okay. Well, I'd like to thank you ladies, Bonnie, Barbara, and Joy. It's been a great show. I'd like to thank the audience out there. This is Positively Plaistow. Take care and keep smiling.